Also co-author of the new book, Trumpnomics, Inside the America First Plan to Revive Our Economy. Stephen Moore, what is Trumpnomics?
Hi. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving.
It was
terrific to be with you.
Very good.
Well, we wrote this book back just as a way of understanding this. It was about 2.5 years ago that Donald Trump called Arthur Laffer and I and Larry Kudlow, who's now the chief economist for Donald Trump.
Also appears in your book?
Yeah, to meet with them at Trump Tower, and this was right when the presidential campaign was just getting going. And at that time, I think I knew 14, you remember there were, what, 15 Republicans running for president or something like that at that time. And I think I knew 14 of the 15, and Donald Trump asked us to come to Trump Tower and meet with them, and we sat down with him for about an hour and talked about economics, just the four of us, and it was an amazing meeting. And after that, he asked us to be his senior economic advisors, and he's a hard guy to say no to. And you know, I was actually quite taken with Donald Trump, but he's a very different person sometimes in private than he is in public, and I just found him to be charming, insightful, very wise. And so anyway, we started working with him, and it was really fun working on that campaign with Donald Trump. We helped write the tax plan and some of his other regulation policies. And basically what Trumpnomics really is, so I knew Ronald Reagan as well. I worked in the Reagan administration. People always say, how is Reaganomics and Trumpnomics different? And I think the big difference is, you know, Donald Trump is not ideological. You know, Reagan was an ideological conservative. Barack Obama was an ideological liberal. Donald Trump doesn't, I think, see the world in that way. He's just a businessman who wanted to bring business principles to Washington. He thought that the American economy could do much better than it was doing. And I was very attracted to that idea. So I think that's the essence of Trumpnomics, bringing pro-business, pro-America policies to Washington to rebuild the economy.
So what economic principles, traditionally Republican economic principles, does Trumpnomics include? And does it include traditionally Democratic principles as well?
That's a great question. So certainly on cutting taxes and reducing regulation, those are, you know, pretty core Republican principles. The big one that I think Trump has obviously parted company with traditional Republicans on has been trade. And Donald Trump ran more as a kind of a blue-collar Democrat, trade protectionist, than he did a free trader. Look, I'm a big free trader. In fact, in that first meeting that I mentioned that we had with Donald Trump when he asked us to be his senior advisors, I remember we were kind of stunned by this. Now, I'll never forget, Larry kind of said, well, broke the silence and said, well, you know, Donald, we called him Donald back then, now we call him Mr. President. We said, we can't work for you, we're for free trade, and you're for trade protectionism. And I'll never forget what he did. And he got a little angry with us. And he said, I'm not a trade protectionist. He said, I believe in the importance of international trade and, you know, global commerce. He said, but I want a level playing field. I want to make sure these other countries are playing by the rules and that they're not taking advantage of us. And, you know, so we kind of agreed to disagree on that issue. I mean, trade is clearly a big part of his agenda. We've got a major trade fight now with China that people are always asking me over the weekend. They've been asked, why is it that the markets are so roiled right now? And in no small part is because of this trade dispute we're having with China.
Are you concerned that that could be the thing that disrupts the market in the future? Is that the thing down the road that could take this off track?
I've always said it's a risky and dangerous strategy, but also, you know, I've found myself, this is one area where Trump has sort of taught me something about economics. When I started looking at the evidence, it turned out there was something from what Trump was saying, that we've lowered our tariffs quite a bit, but a lot of these other nations have not lowered their tariffs, so it's not a level playing field. And Trump wants to have these other countries open up their markets to us in a way that we've opened up our markets and they haven't opened up. And by the way, by far the biggest cheater and stealer on the planet is China. I mean, China is not playing by the rules. I think Trump has a very solid case that Trump is taking advantage of the United States. They have very abusive trade practices. They steal a lot of our intellectual property, our computer software, our drugs and vaccines, our copyrights, our, you know, for example, there are over 100 Apple stores in China, but only like 10 of them are actually owned by Apple. The others are just, you know, they've just basically put the Apple's insignia on the door and say, we're Apple. And so those kinds of things cost American jobs and cost American shareholders and workers, and Trump wants to bring that to an end.
So are you less of a free trader in 2018 than you were in 2016?
That's a good question. No, look, well, in this sense, some of my free market friends are what they call unilateral free trade, that we should just simply open up our markets to any country that wants to trade with us, regardless of their own trade practices. I believe we can do better than that. I think we should demand that China play by the rules. Look, this is now the big issue now for the world economy is whether the United States or China will be the economic superpower. I want to make sure it's the United States, not China, and they should end their abusive trade practices. And Trump said, by the way, at the other day at his Rose Garden press conference, he said, "I am using these tariffs as a negotiating tool to get these other countries to reduce their tariffs as well."
Trumpnomics is our topic with Steve Moore with us for about the next 25 minutes this morning on the Washington Journal. Phone lines, as usual, Democrats 202-748-8000, Republicans 202-748-8001, Independents 202-748-8002. As folks are calling in, you mentioned your involvement in the tax cuts plan, the law that has been passed. This was Chuck Schumer after the election talking about the message that he thought America sent on that tax plan.
Republicans jammed through a biased tax bill that rewarded the wealthy and the powerful special interests. But we Democrats were unified in opposition. We made it clear day after day after day that the Republicans were the party that stands for the rich and for the wealthy special interests. And we were the party on the side of middle-class Americans and those struggling to get there. Republicans predicted the tax bill would save their party, lead to enormous victories in the midterms. Turns out they were afraid to even talk about it. In almost all of their campaigns, they didn't mention it. That's because it was so unpopular. And I believe there's a sea change. For 30 years, the powerful, wealthy few who have dictated tax policy on the Republican side, cut the taxes of the rich, and that's a great thing for America, that's over. I think our message, our focus, has put a knife through the heart of that argument. You won't see the Republicans doing that very much anymore. What they did do is explode the deficit. As a result, people saw it as selfish, narrowly focused, dangerous, and irresponsible.
Steve Moore.
Well, there's a lot there, isn't there? I don't think he likes the tax bill too much. Look, I happen to think that the tax bill was really the trigger that really erupted this economy. We have now the strongest economy we've had in 30 years. The results have been phenomenal. You know, we now have 7 million more jobs than we have people to fill them. You know all these statistics. Trump recites them all the time. We have the lowest unemployment rate, the lowest black unemployment rate, the lowest Hispanic unemployment rate, the lowest Asian unemployment rate, the lowest female unemployment rate since the Beatles were still together. I mean, these are amazing numbers. I travel all over the country, everywhere from Portland, Oregon to Portland, Maine. Everywhere you go, all you see is construction cranes in the sky. You see new factories being built, warehouses, apartments, condominiums, housing. It's a phenomenal economy. And I saw the president the other day, by the way, and I just was joking with him a little bit. And I said, you know, this, Mr. President, this is actually working better than we thought it would. I mean, we never had more than a single year where we had 3% growth in 8 Obama years, and Trump's only been in office for 2 years, and we've already got the economy growing 3.5% to 4%. So we feel really good about how this is done for Americans. And by the way, I love this report that was for this idea that this was just a tax cut for rich people. First of all, the Heritage Foundation, where I work, we did a report looking at how this is affecting the average family, just in terms of the tax cut they're getting every year. And if you're making between $50,000 and $75,000 a year, you get an extra $2,000 off your taxes. Now, if you're making $60,000 a year and you get an extra $2,000 tax cut, I don't care what Nancy Pelosi says. That's not crumbs. That's real income to people that allows them to pay their health insurance, or maybe take a vacation this year, or pay their tuition for their kids. So we feel like it was a great triumph. And this one other thing. Every conversation we have with Donald Trump about this, Larry Kudlow now, every time we talk to Trump about it, he always said, I want to make sure this benefits working class Americans, the steel workers in Pennsylvania, and the coal miners in Charleston, West Virginia, and the auto workers in places like Michigan. And so far, so good. It's created more jobs, and we're starting to even see wage increases for middle class Americans.
We've got you for about 20 more minutes and a lot of phone calls. Dave,
Okay,
Northport, New York, Democrat, go ahead.
Hey, good morning, guys.